So we're here with Larry Zekhtser. So he's a manager at Paging Zone, which is a 10-store Verizon dealer located in the New York metropolitan area. Hi, Larry. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us today. So maybe we can start by asking about you. So how did you get into wireless and how did you grow with Paging Zone?
So I got into wireless, I want to say when I was 15. I just needed a job. I walked in. I ended up working for one of the largest T-Mobile retailers in the country. They were mall-based. After that, there was a guy that walked by, and I greeted him to try to get a sale out of it. Turns out he owned the chain of cell phone stores, and he kind of poached me from there.
Wow.
I ended up working with him. Then I took about 3 years off to do something else. And then I've been here for about 10 years.
And so you might have been there before Statflo was even implemented in the company.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What did outreach look like back then?
So back then, what we would do is all the contracts we did, we would stack them up and we would do 3-day callbacks. So Verizon has this thing where if a customer calls in within the first 14 days, instead of calling the store, it calls customer service, we kind of get a strike against us. So we were always calling in to see if everything was okay with the phones. But with phone calls, a lot of times people saw a number they didn't know and didn't pick up. So we ended up leaving voicemails and there wasn't much interaction. They also gave us this other tool, but it worked the same exact way. It was just phone numbers. We would call the people. Most of the time it would just be a voicemail, maybe 2% of the time somebody to pick up. And the offers weren't really customized by us. It was customized by Verizon. So a lot of times they didn't make sense. So it was just awful. Statflo has fixed all of that for us.
Wow, that's amazing. And so do you remember kind of what was the thought process around identifying that there was a need, right, to implement a new solution?
We saw that many companies are going through texting now instead of actually calling customers or emailing. Very often it makes more sense because the text is right in front of them. They kind of have to open it. So it's in their face, they recognize the name, and it just becomes much easier to interact with our customer base.
So what I'm hearing is that you were looking for a way to communicate through texting, essentially. That was kind of one of the main things that you were looking at?
Correct, 'cause texting is the now.
Yeah, for sure. We hear that a lot. The customers are busy, they don't have time to pick up phone calls, or they just don't trust picking up phone calls. So the ability to text is definitely a big plus. So kind of talking about this, you operate in one of the busiest areas. You're in the New York metropolitan area. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to know, how did Statflo help you serve customers on their terms? Because I'm assuming they're super busy people.
So it's helped us with making the appointment so the customer knows when they come in, we're going to take care of them. It also made it much easier to let them know that they have promotions on their accounts or they're due for a new phone, something they might not even be thinking of. But the beauty of it is as soon as they get that text message, even if they're not buying right now, they have me in the back of their head. So when they are ready, they're going to come to me instead of somewhere else.
What do you think customers like to talk to you about, through texting when you reach out to them?
Honestly, almost everything. We built a very community-based store over here. So I know the customers' kids, I know the customers' wives, I know what they do for a living. So sometimes we'll just talk about that kind of stuff. And again, it doesn't create a sale now, but it shows them that we do care. We're not just a store. And it just has this positive vibe that stays with the customer.
I remember you saying in that last meeting that you're not looking at it from a short-term perspective. You're really looking at the long-term game. And like you said, like establishing a long-term relationship with people, learning more about them. And this just gives you another way to do that, another way to communicate.
Yeah, of course. And this way, knowing what the customer does for a living gives me a chance to offer them devices that they might have not considered, but fill a need in their life. So I have tattoo artists, and now we're pushing the iPad Pros on them so they could draw all their art on there so they don't have to use the antiquated systems. They might have never even thought of it, but once I know what they do for a living, I could find items that could fit their needs.
That's amazing. So you are obviously not just, you're a manager at Paging Zone, but you're also a major user of the app. Maybe you can walk us through how you use the app and What do you identify as success when you use the app, and maybe share a couple great stories about customers that responded to you and you were able to have a conversation with them.
So one great thing that we've been able to use Statflo for is on our callbacks. If the customer did have a good experience, we do ask for a Google review. So this way, when customers search out stores, we're going to come up higher than other stores. So it's helped with our advertising indirectly as well. A good story I have is actually a couple of days ago, I had a customer whose brother lives here. He got a phone from me once. He loved the experience so much that he only deals with me. The problem is he lives in Dallas. So he literally saves all his cell phone issues for when he comes up to visit his brother. But right now, because of COVID, travel's not so easy. And he ended up needing 2 Apple Watches. Instead of going to a local store there and making it easy on himself, he actually had me ship them to him.
That's incredible.
So, yeah.
And so now you have a customer for life in Dallas, and you're just shipping to him, and literally he has this like channel with you, right? You can text you there at any moment.
Correct.
Yeah. And then I heard that you have a really funny story too about a customer inviting you to a bar.
I did text a customer one time to tell them that they had an upgrade available, and they said they really rather talk in person. So I told them to come into the store, but they said they were at a bar 2 blocks away. So I just went over to chat with them for a little bit. Didn't have a drink because I was still on the job, but I did go over and chat with them. And we did close that sale.
You closed the sale?
We closed the sale.
I love that you're the kind of person too that, like, from the texting, right? You can take the experience all the way through, and you actually went and physically met the customer at the bar. I'm sure that customer remembers this story very well.
Oh, I'm sure.
What about, I'm just curious to know, like, in terms of your organization, I think Paging Zone is one of the customers that I work with that's most techie, essentially. You're very innovative. You have a very innovative culture.
So we do have a lot of younger salespeople, and they always found those old phone calls very tedious. So doing the text messaging made it a lot easier. The staff was always very supportive of it, and it made their communication with the customers a lot easier. A lot of people find it to be awkward to be on the phone, and because we've utilized things like Slack and went to work, and everything is basically app-based with us now, it made it easy to show them this as well and get them on board.
I'm really curious to hear, how did that conversation go, right? Like, when you first, how do you get your team excited about a tool like this? So I hear, first of all, it's not a phone call, or it isn't a phone call right away.
Right. We got them excited just by letting them know that you could bring in customers that way, you could bring in recommendations that way, and their pockets are going to feel it.
On the flip side, so obviously that's a very good motivator. You get to make more money. What about holding them accountable? How does the app kind of help you, oversee the work that your team is doing?
So we get to look at all the metrics and see what percentage was done. We do have goals up until points of the month. We have manager meetings 2 times a month, and we do discuss how much of it was done. We do assign different tasks to different people, and we could see who completed how much of their list. So accountability is very easy with Statflo with the reports that you guys have.
You basically get a good overview of where your team's at in terms of, and it's black and white numbers, right?
Right. There's no one between there, right? It's either they did it or they didn't, and they know that, so they do it.
What about in terms of training? Do you find it helps you kind of guide your reps through? Because outreach isn't necessarily an easy thing to do. So I'm curious to know, do you do any like type of shoulder-to-shoulder activities with your team? Or do you review their conversations to help them navigate certain scenarios a little bit better?
So the manager of the store does have responsibility to go over what the team texts. I mean, we do have a lot of preloaded messages, so they can't go wrong there.
Yeah.
But also the company is very supportive. So at any point, somebody could just Slack somebody and go, this is what I got as an answer. What do you think I should reply? So I think the support system that we have makes it much easier to do the outreach.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that I know is a challenge, right? Increasing that quality of conversation. And the texting is nicer in terms of there's a moment of pause where, a second opinion can be asked, but it's also something that you can go back to and like review it at a second time and like take a look at, essentially.
Correct, because everything's just there in black and white.
Yeah. So Larry, obviously we just went through a very challenging time, right? COVID-19 was something that affected your area, unfortunately, quite heavily.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, how did you stay in touch with customers, and how did Statflo kind of help you through that challenging time?
Statflo was immensely helpful during that time. Basically, every corporate store in New York City closed. Most private retailers closed, but because we were deemed essential, because we were communications, we decided that we weren't going to close and we were going to be here for the community. Statflo allowed us to text customers, let them know we're here. If there's anything they need, they can come by. We're cleaning, we're safe, we're doing curbside, and we're even delivering if need be.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing to hear. And did you find that customers received that communication positively?
Correct. Even if they weren't buying, they were at least very thankful for us reaching out. They were telling us to stay safe. It just felt like it was that community that I wanted to build, and there was proof of it. A lot of people went away. A lot of people didn't want to buy phones because money was tight. People weren't working, but they still appreciated the outreach. And honestly, for me, that's enough. That's part of my long game plan versus short-term gain.
Yeah, and I'm curious to know too, that's such a good point, because I agree, lots of people we heard it and we saw it, lots of people chose to stay home, and you're right, money was a component of course. Did you then see an uptake in things as, the community started opening up a little bit and the business activity started resuming?
Oh, for sure. A lot of customers, we weren't able to text everybody, obviously, so a lot of customers didn't know that we were open. As soon as things started opening up, people started going back to work. Yeah, we did see an uptick in business. Statflo definitely helped with that because we kept outreach with people and letting them know that we're open. And I wouldn't say we're back to 100% yet. I don't think anybody really is, but we're at 80, which is pretty good for what's happening right now.
Yeah, that's incredible to hear. I'm actually really curious to hear. We're obviously in a moment where retail is changing. Like, all of us are going to be interacting with retailers in a different way because of what happened. What's your strategy looking forward for Paging Zone, and how are you thinking of maybe incorporating Statflo in that strategy?
So things are going to be different. A lot of customers are asking if we're doing set appointment times. Essentially, we don't really like to work that way because it's a little too corporate for us. It is first come, first serve with us for the most part. But the customers are asking if we're cleaning, if we're providing sanitizer, if everybody's in masks. And it lets us shoot them that text to bring comfort to them so they know they can come in and they know they're going to be safe.
Okay, so more communicating around what are the conditions of business, what can they expect when they come to Paging Zone, and what does that look like?
A lot of people are asking things like that, and it's really comfortable to be able to just shoot that out in a text, give them a good sense of comfort, and have them come in.
Yeah, okay, I hear you there. So more keeping that open communication channel with the customer and, yeah, providing information essentially.
Correct.
So what would you say are you most excited about in Q4? There's a lot, that's going to be happening in the next few months. It's a big, big time for business. What gets you excited?
The Apple launch. The Apple launch always gets exciting. It brings in customers, puts money in people's pockets. It is just an exciting time because everybody wants the new iPhone. So I think we're going to be able to make up for a lot of losses from COVID with that. I mean, that has to be the most exciting part. Can't wait to do that list.
Yeah, I don't think you're the only one that feels that way. I think a lot of us are waiting for the new device and see what it looks like. And
in wireless, September is our Christmas.
That's great. I love that. So do you foresee, you mentioned the list, you're going to be running some sort of list. What's your strategy there in terms of the Apple launch?
Basically, just to let all our Apple customers know they can come in, they can pre-order the phone with us, and we'll take care of everything from them from that point on. Just to let them know they have an upgrade. A lot of people don't have it in mind. Verizon does do annual upgrades on iPhone, so a lot of people still think they have to keep the phone for 2 years. So we give them a nice soft reminder that they only need to keep it for a year and trade it in. It just helps a lot with outreach.
That's an incredible thing to remind customers of. And I think Yeah, and it's nice that you get to isolate those specific customers at a certain kind of time frame in
Mhm.
their journey so that you know who you're speaking to and you can say the right things or the relevant things.
Yes, that gives us an opportunity to make a sale twice in 2 years versus once, as long as we remind the customers and they are interested in a new phone. And Statflo has helped with that immensely because we used to do it also manually by phone calls, and it was just impossible. This has made us more productive. It's increased sales. It's just done everything we hoped it would do.
Question, since you have like such a great focus on building community around you and you use this opportunity to text your customers, just not just to tell them about their upgrade, but also to again have that communication with them. I'm curious to know if you had any advice to give to other dealers that are using Statflo right now or not using Statflo or thinking about it. What would be the biggest piece of advice you'd give them?
The biggest piece of advice I would give them is Statflo is great for increasing revenue and sales, but that shouldn't always be the main focus. I think to me, the main focus is just staying in touch with the customers, making them know that we're here, making sure they know we care. So even if it's not today that we close out on a sale, they know this is the store that I want to go to because this store cares about me personally. And the other stores don't know who I am. So keeping that rapport with them and staying in touch and maybe just even talking about a baseball game with them gives them a good memory for them to come back.
Yeah, I would totally agree that personal touch, becoming a human to them rather than just this business that wants business from them or money from them.
And Statflo really, really helps with that because you can really get on a personal level with customers.
Yeah, agreed. And do you find the customers end up texting you out of the blue? Maybe somebody that wasn't on your list or didn't necessarily talk to you lately?
Oh, yeah. The guy from Dallas, we haven't spoken in a couple of months. And then he still had that text message in his phone. I guess he saved it under me. And he texted me out of the blue for those Apple Watches. So again, the long game really, really works with Statflo.
That's amazing to hear. So if people want to get in touch with you or they want to learn more about what you're up to at Paging Zone, how can they get in touch with you?
So you could email me on my work email. It's larry.z@pagingzone.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Larry. It's been so wonderful speaking to you today.
Thank you for having me.